I was going to tell you yesterday. Good for you to bring up that question. Mr.
Think about it.
It's not for me.
We were gonna have
I'm gonna
a
get the
meeting, I
plan.
was gonna ride my side-by-side. I did spend $15,000 to ride around paved roads.
Well, you got a motorcycle now?
I got a Honda 1000 side-by-side.
Wow. How long have you had that?
I bought it last year.
Okay.
How's she doing?
No, what's she doing today? Thursday she goes and gets a heart monitor.
Aww.
That's your wife?
Frustrating. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, so too bad.
she just can't see.
She's really had some challenges, huh?
Yeah,
She's a fighter.
Yeah.
don't let it get her down, so.
That's the truth. I don't think I've ever seen her crabby. Maybe when the twins were goofing off during Girl Scouts, but I don't think so.
It's been
Well,
Yeah. They already have one with us because he got one when I started out. I got in trouble because I asked him how old he was.
It's come out of the revolving loan fund.
Yeah, which is completely funded by the state. It's funded by the state.
The revolving loan fund.
Yep, it's not property tax or.
Good morning.
What's the revolving loan fund? Church taxes.
How's y'all? Y'all's good? Okay then.
Yeah,
is it?
he's on that, yeah.
You on the revolving loan fund? Birch Terrace square up?
We're gonna. This is from
Minnesota Off-Road.
Get my email, Christian? Yeah, that's just a little bitty stretch. Okay. Yeah.
Coffee's for later. Oh, that's right, it's day one. Okay.
Brady,
Morning, Brady.
we heard about Lakeville. We had a session last Friday with DMV.
Hey, you've got, I'm in the state.
Yeah.
We got our,
Before you get used to Brady, can I look at him?
Take a. Yep.
Resubmitting the form.
this is resurvey evaluation. So now we're gonna get another.
And here you have a little rainbow in front of
Thank you
you.
very much. They're so pretty.
It's reassessed. So based upon low valuations that we, even with 50% increase for we're only gonna get $8,000. Because we're being penalized for that low for the next 5 years. We're gonna try to get that law changed. That's where the statute is. So, Minnesota Association, Northeast Counties Association and Club Board were working with that change.
Okay.
So it's evaluated every 2 or 3 years, so we're not.
Wondered. Oh, can I get a copy of this?
Do you want a copy of it? Yeah, I've got the other information on it too.
Maybe they haven't sent it. Well,
Well,
we'll
they
get
gave it to us.
Are you ready?
Yeah. I'll leave that with you.
Just hammer your gavel.
Good morning. I I will call the Cook County Board of Commissioners to order on this date, July 10th. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Making adjustments to the agenda. Anybody need to do that? Okay. Motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
At this time, we will receive comments from the public. We will give you 5 minutes. We ask that you be respectful in your presentation. And if you have anything afterwards for a handout, you may come forth and do that. So we'll have the first person who'd like to step up and do that. Please state your name, and I believe you already signed in.
Should I sit down?
Yes,
here?
please.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Greg Galen. I'm a resident of Cook County, a landowner. Moved up here from Florida about 20 years ago. And I own 2 four-wheel drive vehicles, and I love the back roads and Jeep trails of Cook County. I love the wildlands, forests, and the boundary waters. And I have to tell you, I've traveled all around the lower 48, and there's nothing else in the 48 states quite like what you have here. It's really something special. It's really something special and different, and that's why I live here. And the reason I came here to talk to you today is that I want to urge the commissioners to do everything you can to defeat the border-to-border route proposal. Here's the thing. This state is covered with places that are devoted to motor vehicle traffic. And what I need to ask you is, where does someone go to get away from all this? I think that Cook County is a great place to go. Oh boy, my map's falling apart. I think that Cook County is a great place to go to get away from all this. It's a place to get away from the noise, the crowds, the traffic, and there are a lot of us who very much need a place devoted to that. Just like my motor friends need a place to drive off-road. We all need to have our passions and interests accommodated for. But there needs to be a good separation between certain kinds of activities. That's reasonable. Otherwise, it's like a horse in church. There's nothing wrong with a horse, and there's nothing wrong with church. Just please keep your horse outside the church. Cook County is a place where we can accommodate a wide variety of activities and interests, as long as we have goals and guidelines that protect the special qualities that make Cook County unique. Very important. Encouraging increased traffic and crowding more people and vehicles into our wildlands runs counter to that goal. I want to tell you, there were so many bad ideas which changed the character of the places where I lived in Florida. If you go there today, you can't see much of anything left of what I experienced as a kid growing up there. It's just been completely erased and replaced, you know. And much for the worse, in my opinion. But you know what? After 20 years, you still have a lot of the magic and mystique of the Cook County that I moved into back in 1998. In a way, Cook County is like a great song or like great music. A very important thing which makes all great music great is what you don't hear. It's what's missing in the music. And in that spirit, I ask you to please keep out the things that will diminish the qualities that make our area one of a kind. Please help us to keep the litter, the noise, and the excess signage off our back roads. Please help us to keep motor traffic to reasonable levels and preserve our back roads in good condition. And please do everything you can to keep the border-to-border route out of Cook County. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a video I'd like to show on my laptop. You could just pass it around while I'm talking. And
Could you send that to us in an email? Because you've only got 5 minutes, and we've got staff
It's
waiting.
less than a minute, so.
Okay, but if you
sure.
could send it in an email, that'd be great.
I'll try and do that.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Don Petrick, and I live near
I get
Lincoln.
one, right?
And I'm speaking in opposition to the border-to-border route as well, too. I don't have a lot to say, but I think the video kind of speaks for itself. This is where you see water streaming across the Mark Lake Road, and I believe that's in the Mistletoe Creek watershed. And Mistletoe Creek really loops around a large area, and eventually it empties into a number of lakes downstream. And so there are many people with property and residents living on, you know, in that watershed area. So the concern I have after seeing this video that I'm sharing with you is that, again, this is water streaming over the road. Four-wheel drive vehicles coming from long distances could be bringing in invasive species. They drive through this water in the puddles and the ruts, which I showed in some of my earlier pictures when we had the earlier board meeting. And the concern I have is that it seems pretty obvious that you know, when vehicles are going through, they're going to slosh through, and whatever they may have picked up in North Dakota or near North Dakota in a different ecosystem would wash off, enter the Mistletoe Creek watershed, and then just spread throughout a large area. And as we know, invasive species are a very serious concern. And as I was listening to the proposal from the DNR, I didn't really hear much in the way of a plan on how to address or remediate that. So that is, I think, a very important thing just to kind of see visually how this would play out. And again, looking at sections of the road, they're single lane. We're looking at four large full-size vehicles traveling in two directions. I guess I would wonder, what are these vehicles going to do when they reach one another? And it's a single lane road, and there's wetlands on either side. And as in some of the pictures I showed, again, you already have ruts off to the side where vehicles have pulled off probably when they're passing one another. So I guess in closing, there was, you probably know, a Star Tribune article, I think in the Sunday paper. And there was a comment from Dan Larson, who's a lobbyist with the Minnesota Four-Wheel Drive Association. And he said that, well, we ride responsibly and we ride with low impact. And I just have a hard time wrapping my head around those comments saying, you know, that you're riding responsibly and riding with low impact when I see the type of impact that it's having, particularly in the primitive roads. I think primitive roads are much more vulnerable because they're not really built to standards where they can kind of protect the environment as vehicles are going by when there's water that's sloshing over, streaming over the roads, as I show in the video there with that. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. If you'd send us that video, then we could study it further.
Okay.
That'd be great. Thank you. Down there. Anyone else would like to come?
Hi, I'm Scott Penolkin, resident of Cook County, Minnesota. I'm sure you all recognize me. I'm in favor of the border-to-border. There is more than enough land here for everyone to enjoy in any way they want. They speak of places where they can go and get away from the noise. Isn't that why the boundary waters was created? The talk about invasive species and the vehicles that might be on these roads carrying invasive species. Don't forget how hard Cook County markets the Lutz and 99er. These bikes come from all over the country. All over the country. They get muddy. Mark Lake Road is part of the bike route, it's a designated bike trail. It's a multi-use path. It's a multi-use path for a reason. There's more than enough land. There's areas where you can go and get away from the noise. That's why the boundary water is one of the reasons the boundary water was created. And a highway licensed vehicle, Minnesota statute, can pretty much go any place that is open to a highway licensed vehicle. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Brad Thompson. Been in Grand Marais most of my life, 40 plus years. I support the border-to-border route. None of us want to wreck our country. I don't believe this is anything to wreck our country. We're not tearing up, building a new bicycle path along the highway or over creeks. Or this is something I believe is pretty low impact. I see it as family events, looking at leaves, looking at birds. Pretty mellow thing, if you ask me. Let's see. I guess I also feel that I had to come up here to voice my support for this. There's hundreds of people that don't show up at these meetings that are of my same opinion. Lots of my friends and contacts, for what that's worth, they're not here to give you their opinion, but there's hundreds and hundreds of people that are supporting me. So that's all I got for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm for the border-to-border route for a few good reasons. We've lived here all our lives. We want to stay here. We want to enjoy what we do. These roads that we're on and they're talking about are all logging roads. They've been here before I was even born, most of them. And the water that we're talking about, some of the creeks and stuff, is no different than the county roads that wash out when you get a rain. Some fixing needs to be done. There's, when you look at the 99er and all the hiking and the Superior Hiking Trail and the places that these trails go through, when they come out of the woods after the rainy season, they're full of mud. You can see pictures of the bikes. They're carrying through some of the swampy areas. The runners are totally full of mud. And the people that are against this should be against all of that then also. But you don't hear them saying any of that. They're just against the motor part of it. The boundary waters is up there for a reason. We have this down here for recreation, multiple use recreation, and logging, and maintaining our forests, and enjoying our forests. So I support it. I hope that you would all see it that way too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Morning.
I read in the paper $418,000 is being put forward towards promoting Cook County. $418,000 to bring people up here, to put ads on TV. That represents to me a lot of disturbance in my neck of the woods. I like my quiet. I don't like to see these people come on the roads and disobey the laws. I have difficulty in town when I see the people running through stoplights, driving on areas where they shouldn't be, parking where they shouldn't be, people who don't obey pedestrian laws. They're disturbing my peace and quiet. What we moved up here 40 years ago is getting pretty hard to find many times. You put money into on one side of the street to promote people coming here, they need something to do, and I'm not saying that these people are going to be on your border to border, but they're here. They're disturbing my peace and quiet as well as everybody else's. I don't know that there is an easy answer to that. And I don't even have a question in there. What I just simply have is a comment that says it's an interesting conflict. On a whole different note, I read in the paper that there's $29,000 being proposed to spend on the ARDC to come in and do a transportation survey of some sort. I know Kristen is going to come up and do a presentation for you. And I don't mean to pick on her, so, but it's an example to me of why are we doing this? What do we need somebody else to come in and tell us what we need to do with our roads? Do we not have skilled people who already are involved in these areas? Can they not make proposals? A plan from ARDC, they're going to be looking at numbers and statistics, which I believe are readily available to probably anybody who can take the time to go look and see what they are. When I see something in the paper that says someone is asking for money, I can almost guarantee that it's going to be approved. Rarely do we ever see a no. I don't know if no is a possibility.
Thank you, Arvis. Anyone else for 5 minutes? Please sign in first and state your name.
My name is Margie Nelson, and my family has owned and operated Clearwater Lodge from 1963 to 1995, so I have a lot of investment and appreciation of the area. And what I think sometimes we're getting confused about what we're talking about. My understanding is that you're not talking about taking away any rights of enjoying the trails as they are now. It's simply a question of marketing. And to me, that's my concern, is the more if we market more motorized activities, more motorized possibilities, I'm worried that the Boundary Waters area and the other nearby areas that people come to for the kind of peace and quiet that we can offer in this region, that they're going to be put off and put away by that, and that's going to start shifting what we're most known for and in the money that comes in from the tourists in different areas. I don't see why there's an issue, really. It's just a question of if you want to market for more activity of this sort. And it doesn't take away anything from anyone else. And to me, that's the most important.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Tim Nelson. I live in Lutzen, Minnesota. I just wanted to add my weight to the anti-border crowd and voice. I believe that the marketing of this route will chase away more tourist dollars than it'll bring in, because this place really is famous, and his biggest draw is its semi-wilderness character. And adding the noise pollution is not something that people are going to want to come up here. That people come here now and will come in the future are going to want to put up with. So I think there's a big risk to incremental marketing of this kind of activity. It'll change. It'll really detract from what really brings most people here and what we're famous for. So in addition, I have the same concerns that have been previously voiced about invasive species and erosion and not having enough funds or enough time to fix all that stuff after it's reported. So I'll add my weight to the anti-B2B crowd. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then we will end the public comment and move on to our board agenda. So right now, we have the consent agenda. Anyone want to pull anything? Then a motion to approve the consent agenda as a whole.
So moved.
I'll second.
Oh, Jen can have it. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. That has passed. So the next item would be a presentation by Kristen Foster, our highway engineer.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners, colleagues. I'm here with a few items this morning. I want to start by thanking you for your patience with the time demands from Lake County on my time last month. 5 inches of rain overnight is something that we certainly can't plan for, so I thank you for saving some of these topics for today's meeting. To start off, I'm not going to approach them in order. I would like to start talking about our chloride budget for this year and just a general chloride update for public information purposes. We've been receiving a lot of calls about chloride at the highway department, which isn't a surprise. It's much later than what we expected and actually much later than what our contract requires for applying chloride to our road this year. So if this year's contractor is the apparent low bidder, next year we will have to handle that at that time. We're trying to get it here as soon as we can. The most recent schedule update that we heard from them is towards the end of next week is when they expect the chloride to be restocked for application so that they could get it in Cook County. The chloride that comes to Cook County actually comes from a dock in Duluth, and what we're hearing from the contractor is that's not currently available to get here any sooner than next week. So that said, I thought it would be helpful to review some of the items that we consider as to how we set priorities for roads. Right now, our budget provides for chloriding roads every, say, 2 to 3 years. Some of the roads that aren't on this year's list would presumably be on next year's list, along with some other roads that we chloride every year. The budget proposal is subject to change from year to year. When we look at the roads that we are planning to chloride this year, we look at it from the perspective of keeping the aggregate on the road so that we have to re-gravel our roads less often. That's the best way I could explain it. It does provide a secondary benefit to pedestrians and residents in the form of dust control. And if we wanted to propose a program for the primary benefit of dust control, we could look at it from a different perspective in the future. Right now, some of the things we take into consideration are how much traffic a road serves, what type of traffic, does one road have more trucks than another route, for example. We try to take care of steep hills as much as we can to minimize the chance they might wash out. What type of gravel is on a road. Some gravel is dustier than others or has more clay than others, for example. And with that perspective and keeping in mind that purpose of keeping our gravel on the roads, and that's the benefit of investing in chloride, that's the lens that we currently look through our list of roads with. Now we will be bringing forward some different options for next year's budget, so I wanted to provide this informational update this morning that if we should be looking at the roads from a pedestrian perspective or a dust control perspective, how many residents live along a road or how close are the homes, we would be glad to do that next year, but it would be a different lens and a different number than the way we currently look at our program. So I'm not here requesting any action on the dust control, but we are getting a lot of calls. It's much later than we want it to be, than we expected, than we required, and we're doing our best to get it here as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Are there any questions about the chloride program before I move on to our action items for the month?
Questions, comments?
I'd like more money in the budget for chloride.
So right now we have, the bid will be the Tri-City with the lower bid, 96,100.
Yes, we're currently paying about 96 cents per gallon for chloride here in Cook County. And we are applying at the minimum rate possible, or possible to be effective, which is about 0.2 gallons per square yard. The width that we spray on every road varies, and we're doing what we can to cover as much as we can with the amount that we have.
So approximately how much are we gonna cover this year? You figure a third, or when you look at the need from your perspective of, you know, what you think should be done and what we're doing each year?
That's a great question, Commissioner Bersheim. I'm interested to hear more about what's important to our residents and our constituents, and every neighborhood seems to be different. In some neighborhoods, of course, there's concern about the impacts of chloride, and maybe we shouldn't be spraying some neighborhoods or others. In other neighborhoods of Cook County, there's a stronger desire for dust control than chloride. So right now we have a balance of many different factors as much as we can achieve for about 100,000 per year. I think this year we're looking at 105,000 based on that bid price of 96 cents per gallon. Next year, if we wanted to chloride all roads in Cook County, we would be looking at maybe 200,000 or a little more than that. We haven't done that since prior to 2013, if not before then. If we wanted to create what some might think is a better mix, we would be looking at maybe a budget of 150,000 to cover more roads than what we're covering this year.
And by a better mix, what does that mean?
Back in 2016, we did cover more roads with the dollars that we had at that time. And if we wanted to get back to that level of service, that would be about $150,000 for next year's budget.
Yes, Commissioner.
And the reason for doing all roads would be to reset and start over because we missed a year, right? Would be
2017.
kind of the concept to do that, is to reset the clock?
Commissioner Dukirk, that would be one option, yes. If we wanted to do all roads 1 year, that's one option we could consider for the 2019 budget, and then get back to our 2 to 3 year schedule, being that we missed the opportunity last year.
And just to be representative of my district, there are people in my district who do not want calcium because they believe it's affecting the lakes, and they're not limited to calcium. They would also like us to stop the winter salt also, just to make sure that I am accurately portraying my community.
Okay. Anything else on that topic?
I think
Yeah.
the people need to know the reason why it didn't get chlorided last year is because of the budget
Why it didn't, yeah.
that we cut it so
Completely.
completely.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why it's lower this year is we also went a little lower.
So I think we'll probably have some further discussion, and maybe individually we can talk to you also.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. We're always happy to take questions from commissioners or the public at the Highway Department. Moving on to the proposed Erickson Engineering contract for bridge design services. This, structured on Two Island River on County State Aid Highway 1 in Schroeder, is the last of our top 4 immediate bridge priorities here in Cook County. We do have a longer list of about 15 structures that we should try to find a way to replace in the next 5 to 10 years if possible. But we also have this short-term list of 4 priorities, the other 3 of which have already been addressed through other contracts. And the one we need to resolve is a near-term fix for the culvert that's currently on Two Island River on County State Aid Highway 1 in Schroeder. To review the details of the Erickson Engineering Agreement a little bit, we're looking at a contract cost proposed of $55,255 based on what we know today. One of the important details that we don't have enough information about yet is whether this culvert needs to be replaced with a bridge for environmental considerations, for example, or for other reasons, or if the culvert can be replaced with the culvert. And the level of effort and detail that is required for a bridge versus a culvert is very different. At this time, I would like to move ahead, keeping our fingers crossed, or going with the assumption that we can proceed with a contract for $55,255 to design and construct a replacement culvert, although that could change. Another option that we have with this contract is that it does include both design and construction administration services at this point, which is what we're requesting authorization for. When we look ahead to next year's construction program and the level of staffing that we currently have at the Highway Department, we aren't expecting sufficient technicians to be everywhere all at once and everything that we need to cover, which is why we're requesting Erickson Engineering's assistance with the construction phase on this particular project. Alternatively, if we looked at authorizing an agreement for design services at this time until we have more information about construction program, the amount that we would be looking for would be $32,115. Oftentimes, we receive a lot of good questions, whether it be about the transportation plan, which is my next topic, or bridge design services, for example, as to what we employ here at Cook County, maybe how that compares to other rural counties, and why we can't deliver some of these services with the staff that we already have. When we compare ourselves to St. Louis County, for example, they have an assistant engineer, a traffic engineer, a full-time bridge engineer, 2 construction engineers, and that's in addition to their public works director and a county engineer. Most small counties don't have a sufficient structure program to justify employing a full-time bridge engineer on staff. So that is when we do have bridge needs that come out, such as this one, we are looking for assistance from a bridge engineer in this case.
Okay, questions, comments? So what you're proposing is either you do the contract for the design and construction at $32,115?
Madam Chair and Commissioners, the option we're recommending at this time is to proceed with a design and construction administration contract in the amount of $55,255. If we felt more comfortable proceeding with the design contract until we have more information about the project and next year's construction program, the amount that we would be looking at for design services, assuming it's replaced with another culvert, is $32,115.
Okay, thoughts, comments on the 2 different prices and what they would do?
This is
Commissioner?
one of the bridges that the state inspected and it didn't pass, correct?
Commissioner DeShaw, that is correct. This is the last of the 4 structures we need to address in the near term.
Okay, and I think this is a pretty important road. This is the road that gets detoured when people knock down our bridge in Taconite Harbor.
Oh.
Or oversized loads are coming through, they use this road.
Just keep knocking that thing down.
It's gone now.
Yeah, knock the other one down.
Or semis that need to bring wind generators to Canada? Yes, Commissioner Dukirk.
We've budgeted for the 55 to cover this, and our highway department isn't the only department that contracts for services outside of our scope of what we have staffing to do, and it's what we have to do when we're a small county and we have limited ability to staff. I mean, we would love to have the staff with all the expertise in all the departments. 1, we don't have the space. 2, we don't have the budget. And frankly, if I was a bridge engineer, I might get a little bored in Cook County. We have a lot of bridges, but, you know, the other side you got to think about it is how do you get someone to work here whose job is not the same as when they're working somewhere else and they're doing it over and over again. So I'm just grateful that we're able to find people to do the services for us as remote as we are. So it's a good thing.
I think, safety comes first in our decisions, and then we have to see if we can afford it. And I would think that the first proposal would be the logical way to go, rather than delaying it. We're trying to do it more haphazardly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I agree that for our county being remote and also looking forward and doing some long-term planning, this proposal makes the most sense. And it would be way more expensive if we did have a bridge engineer on our staff. So I think doing things this way makes sense. It's why we do them this way, because we have to. But financially, it would work to have all these expertise, all these experts on staff. And the other piece about, which will play into your next subject, the transportation plan, is this long-term planning. This sort of plays into that. We're looking at this as a safety measure. Is it really just a culvert or is it a bridge? In which case, there's
outside funding that helps us with those things. So this makes, this is a very thoughtful presentation, and I think it makes sense. I would support it. In fact, I'll make the motion to authorize hiring Erickson Engineering for design and permitting services for the replacement of Cook County Bridge 92665 on CASA 1 over to Island River.
Support.
Any further discussion or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
To
Thank-
continue.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Thank you for Commissioner Severson for leading into our transportation plan topic. One of the questions that comes up when we have these 4 bridges that suddenly need to be addressed right away, and by right away I mean in the short term, in 1 or 2 years, or even a couple of months, as compared to having a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan for the Highway Department and for Cook County. One of the things that we can do to help us plan ahead is to consider entering into this contract with Arrowhead Regional Development Commission to help us develop a transportation plan for Cook County. We are currently in the final year of our current transportation improvement plan, which was a 5-year plan, and that's something that was done in-house at the time. We do have the ability to create a 5-year plan in-house if we wanted to do that. The benefit of considering a contract with ARDC, on the other hand, in my opinion, and one of the reasons why the Highway Department is bringing this forward for board consideration, is that we wouldn't be leveraging the skills and experience of a regional transportation planner by doing this in-house. One of the things that we want to do and that I want to do in bringing this transportation planning effort forward is to make sure that we're leveraging all of the outside sources of funding that we can for Cook County before we're looking to our local residents to pay the bill for some of these immediate bridge needs beyond what our state aid program can support, for example, or having surprise contracts that we weren't expecting because something needs to be immediately addressed. What we would like to spend our time on is looking ahead and trying to avoid those challenges in the future by having a long-term vision for Cook County's transportation plan. ARDC works with many agencies in our region. We do not have a transportation planner here on staff. ARDC does contract on an ongoing basis with some of the smaller agencies, such as the small cities, and helping develop them for their plans. We aren't looking to contract with ARDC on an ongoing basis for this effort. We are looking to bring them into Cook County specifically to help us develop this transportation plan. Some of the benefits of working with a transportation planner compared to just an engineer like myself, they can spend more time on the public involvement aspect of the transportation plan, which I personally think is an important component. We want to know what the public's expectations are for the level of service so that we can correlate those with the costs to deliver the services that they would like to see us provide as a county. And that's one of the bigger picture items that we spend more time on through a concerted planning effort as opposed to an engineering style 5-year plan. And those would be the benefits of this contract to the residents of Cook County, in my opinion. I'm glad to take any questions on the transportation plan. If we wanted to spend a couple of more weeks looking at the scope and seeing if this scope is the right fit for Cook County, I would be happy to do that in light of some of the questions that we heard this morning. If there aren't any further questions on the transportation plan, I would ask for authorization to proceed with a contract in the amount of $29,821 to bring on ARDC to help us make sure that we're making the most out of our transportation program here for the next 5, 10, 20 years in Cook County.
Thank you. We'll open it up for questions, comments. Commissioner Severson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This makes a lot of sense to me. We've had ARDC lead us through many, many planning efforts, and I haven't heard very many complaints. They do a great job. They don't, they invite the public and they invite the community to participate in a very good way.
they don't just bring their ideas and pontificate. They lead by asking people what they think. And the idea that the community needs to weigh in on what their expectations are for the future. So this makes tons of sense. 20-year plans are becoming the norm. And for an organization this size and for the roads, the number of roads that we have, I think a 20-year plan is kind of a minimum. And there are many savings opportunities when you make a plan with that kind of scope. You can synergize projects, which we've been trying to do in the short term, but I think you look long range and there will be way more opportunities to do that. So I'm very much in favor of hiring ARDC to help us in this planning process for the transportation of the future. Thank you. And I noticed that there are funds already budgeted for this.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, yes.
And I think one thing interesting too is that in the highway department, it would be difficult to understand the outside resources, and you brought that point out, that being able to leverage for that would be really important. And just a reminder that our county roads numbers 1 through 24 are state aid, but the rest of the roads depend on other sources. So that's where leveraging and understanding what outside sources can do for us is good. Commissioner Bergeron.
Planning is very important and from all aspects, especially we can also develop, and it's fits our long-range planning for budgeting and so forth. And definitely, I think the other comments that have been made, I agree with.
Not sure if it's year 2 or 3 that we've been without an assistant engineer. This might be a project that we could give to our assistant engineer, but a 20-year plan developed by one person in our office who has 5 billion other tasks. I think having ARDC with all of its resources and all of the different people and components coming in at $29,000, I hope they're not watching our video, is a heck of a deal. Please don't raise prices. And yes, when they come in, the work that they do with our community has been wonderful and very detail orientated, and they bring us a good project when they're done. And so we can't hire an assistant engineer at $29,000.
That's what it would take, yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things with the 20-year plan is they can identify what we need, identify, a lot of the funding that comes down, you have to be shovel ready for it. And we're in a long list of counties here with very little funding available. So I think for the $29,000 for 20-year plan is a well spent money.
Motion to approve.
Support.
Any further discussion or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item will be a presentation by Lisa and Tim, or is it mostly Lisa? And Molly, maybe.
Yeah.
Katie had a question. Oh. She doesn't have her hand up anymore. Okay.
Well, good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. So I have 2 items for you today pertaining to the Britton Peak to Lutsen Mountain Connector Trail, which Cook County is the fiscal agent, applicant and co-applicant, along with the Spear Cycling Association. Why could we use more mountain biking trails here in Cook County? It's an increasing recreation sport and getting more popular, which we could see by the success of the Lutsen 99er and other races that have been here in Cook County that just seem to gain with numbers and popularity each year. And this connector trail would provide added value, options, and experience levels that are going to create added economic value and recreation opportunities for both the county and for the community. And the current project grant totals are $465,500, which of that, the FRTP grant is $187,500. That's already in place. And so today we're talking more with the Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails Commission Legacy Grant. which is a little background as far as the county board involvement. There was a resolution of support in April 25th of 2016, and then a resolution for phase 1 funding request August 23rd of 2016, and then consent and authorization signature to accept the legacy grant on December 19th, 2007. And initially this grant was going to cover the roughly 15 miles of this trail. But due to increasing prices and costs of trail building, they've had to change the scope. And so the first item today is basically an amendment of the scope for the legacy grant. And so it's bringing it from the 15.9 miles down to 7.3. And this change of scope was approved by the Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails Commission on their June 27th meeting. And so today I'll just be looking for your approval and signature of the amendment, which Brady should have on file for you. Are there any questions about that?
Okay, questions, comments? Commissioner Deschamps?
Any questions?
When we approved this back there, that was for 16 miles, correct?
Yes, roughly 15.9. Well, that's the total project. They didn't know for sure at that time how much it was going to cover. They hoped it would cover the whole thing, but prices just have changed in that much. And they're already seeking funding for the remaining part of it as well, through EDA and IRRB and other sources.
And you can come back to me.
Mr. Dukert?
No questions.
Just my understanding that this is contingent on legacy funding,
Correct.
and has that, then the application's been made, and we have any idea when that's gonna be awarded, or has it been?
Thank you. Yeah, it's already been awarded. This is basically just an amendment to that grant.
Okay, thank you, okay, good.
Mr. Severson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm wondering if they'll be able to get started and get the project done before the prices go up. We have to change the scope again. Prices increasing rapidly these days. I would imagine that I have no trouble with this, but I just hope, because the first request came in 2016 and now it's 2018, and of course prices are going to be a lot higher. I'm hoping that this can get done within that budget before the scope has to be shrunk again. That would be my only caveat. But otherwise, I would definitely, I'll make the motion to approve and sign amendment to scope of legacy grant for Tofte to Lutsen Connector Mountain Bike Trail to reduce trail miles to be built to 7.3 due to the increased costs.
Support.
Any further comments, questions? All in, oh, boop, boop.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yes.
And if I remember correct, there was only one bidder on this.
Correct.
And is there any way we could rebid it?
We had to bid it out twice. The first time there were no bidders, and the bid has been accepted, and the plan is to start beginning of August.
Great.
I just think that's $465,000 for 7 miles of a bike trail is a little excessive. So I will be voting no.
Okay, then we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed?
Opposed?
Thank you. Motion passes. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. And our second item is due to this legacy grant, this is the kind of first time for Cook County, and Cook County was the only applicant. With this type of grant, there's no co-applicant. And so we needed a way to bring in Superior Cycling Association, as we've been talking about today with staffing and experience. I don't have those skills in order to be on site and doing the inspection and making sure things are going correctly. And so this cooperative agreement that's before you is to kind of give us that outlet to employ and use Superior Cycling Association for their experience and their on-site inspections and making sure everything is going correctly. And So it's basically, they're gonna be our eyes and ears on the project. And then it includes progress reports, and we're working in where I would go out there periodically and do inspections with a member of SCA to make sure that everything is going according to plan and that everything is being followed as far as, you know, rules, regulations, things of that nature.
Okay, so let's talk about this. Commissioner Sievertson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I think the Superior Cycling Association has been involved in the bike trails for a long time, and they seem, I don't know who else we would be able to rely on for this skill, and I think this skill is needed, so I can appreciate it.
No, there's no way to possibly do it, but it'd be pretty interesting for us to sit down and figure out what it would actually cost to run Cook County if we did everything ourselves. It'd be a pretty phenomenal
What the levy
number.
would be.
Or we could just take Ramsey County's budget and say that would be ours, I don't know, but. And it's okay that you don't know how to do everything. I don't know anyone that does. I'm done.
No comment.
Motion to approve.
I'll second it.
So my comment would be here is that you would be called on at various times to go out and inspect the progress of the trail?
That is
or
correct.
anything that would come up. So this is something that you're entering into for a year, 2 years, or as needed?
It was, I mean, maybe Molly can specify for sure, but it's as long as the project is going on.
For this particular one project?
Correct.
Okay. Is that right, Molly?
Yes.
For the one. Okay.
There's a term in the agreement of 5 years, and we can always shorten that by mutual agreement. The reason it's 5 years is because we only have the funding and scope right now to complete half of the project, and we're assuming that we would need this arrangement with SCA so long as the project continues. So.
Okay. Hopefully then, looking at the second phase of the project, if money would come in for that then, this would cover that. Okay. All right, motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
The next item is a presentation on restorative justice.
I'm gonna turn on the. I'm not sure what to plug in here for power. Is it this one?
Could you pull it out a little bit? We're missing it on this side. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have a PowerPoint. So the reason that we are here today is because at the last board meeting, there was a request to include a county commissioner on the steering committee or planning committee for a restorative justice planning project. And a commissioner requested that we provide some additional information about what restorative justice is and why we want county representation on that committee. Input? Miracast. And project. There it is. This is a brand new unit. While we wait for this to connect, I'm just gonna go ahead and start talking. But Inger Anders, do you wanna just describe what the,
Do you want to just plug in HDMI?
Sure. We're gonna try a different method.
Thank you for your patience.
There's no plug for that.
Oh, yeah. Which means our docking station.
So. All right, restorative justice planning. I can kind of give a little historical perspective here. The county attorney's office, a couple years ago when Carla Hill was our paralegal / victim witness coordinator, began exploring the perspective of developing a restorative justice program in Cook County with the cooperation of the Cook County Attorney's Office as a kind of a supplement to our traditional criminal justice system and an option for a probation condition. So an offender would be court ordered to cooperate with restorative justice. What we discovered over the process of our learning about restorative justice practices is really the most effective model is a community-driven model for restorative justice, not a systems model which invites the community, but a community model that invites in the system. And so we kind of, since there wasn't a core group of community members who were willing to push that forward at the time, we kind of let it lie for a while. But then this year, restorative justice came up in discussions again because of Inger's project. Do you want to describe what your project is?
Well, you've seen me before here with Choices and Voices and the things that we've been trying to do over the years. And so, big picture of seeing how healing in this community is a lot bigger than just the safe harbor laws and the things that I was talking about earlier with the exploitation, older with younger, and the whole idea of realizing that if we could start to step into circle healing, I guess is another way of saying it,
mediation, restorative justice. Steve Barud also was very much an advocate of this, and I sat down with him, our probation officer for 31 years that was here in Cook County. And so just following the dream of the vision, I should say, more than the dream, the vision of seeing how that could really help this community in a wonderful way. Even Commissioner Bersheim and I have had conversations for 3-4 years about this and for this community. So it's something that I believe is part of the big picture with understanding true healing from the very issues that I've been representing for the past 3 or 4 years. So with that in mind, Choices and Voices, I applied for a grant with the Duluth, or Superior Duluth Community Fund in order to pay for the training, which is a 2-day full 16-hour training for volunteers to be able to participate in the restorative justice. And so in lieu of all that, actually before that, Ted Lewis, who is a UMD professor for restorative justice, actually has done several informational meetings over the years up here, along with a couple other people. But so there's been an increase of support by the community, and so with that, I believe we already have established a stakeholders meetings. We will have the 3rd meeting on August 21st. We have had Pat Eliason, Sheriff Pat Eliason, besides Molly and Leah. We've had also Lindsay from the Violence Prevention Center represented there. Also, am I like booming? Can I not talk in this? I feel like I'm booming. Is it too booming, my voice?
The back of the room cannot hear unless you
Oh,
speak
really?
into
Okay.
it, so it may be difficult for you.
Okay,
but it's
maybe my lower
essential.
voice, and I gotta raise it a little bit higher so it's not booming so much.
It's not booming. It's
Okay.
so not
But you don't
booming.
have to lean into it.
Okay. And we've also had probation officer Alex Kupka participate, and we are also getting a representative from Grand Portage, and we really want as much participation from the community. So there are several community members who have been very interested in this, who are also committed to being on that stakeholder committee for the restorative justice. And
Interruption, just kind of talk about what restorative justice is for folks who don't know, have that background. Restorative justice is described as a process through which parties with a stake in an offense collectively together resolve how to deal with the aftermath of that offense and its implications for the future. It is victim-centered as opposed to traditional criminal justice, which focuses on charging the defendant, bringing the defendant into court, punitive consequences to the defendant. This is more victim-centered. How was the victim harmed? How does the victim need to heal? It's community-driven, as I mentioned, and the couple key concepts are acknowledgement of the harm that was caused by the offense, and then accountability for the harm. So it does include accountability. It doesn't, restorative justice, well, we wouldn't call it punitive. It doesn't relax accountability for an offender. In fact, in a lot of cases, it might be harder for an offender to sit face-to-face with their victim and face the actual harm they've caused than it is to sit in a courtroom and face a judge. So restorative justice provides opportunities for those most directly affected by a crime, the victim, offender, families, and other community members to be actively involved in the process of addressing the harms, needs, and obligations. It's about offender accountability, victim healing, and community safety through mediation and dialogue whenever possible. So Inger mentioned circles or peacemaking circles, talking circles. That is one of the restorative justice practices. There's also victim offender mediation, which I think we're gonna.
We're initiating this,
Our
right.
planning process is really trying to start with a small scope,
And then
so that we can handle, so that we know what we can handle and it's sustainable, and then
Right.
possibly expanding outward. So I think victim offender mediation is one restorative justice practice that we'll start with. There's also restorative group conferencing, which includes family group conferencing and community conferencing. Why we need it in Cook County, not every investigation that the sheriff's office does, not every case that is referred to us, not every conflict in this community is appropriate for the criminal justice system. Especially when we think about, you know, kids committing crime, you know, fights at school, neighbor conflicts. This is the kind of stuff that it really doesn't always seem right to bring into court. And certainly bringing something like a neighbor conflict into court does not always resolve that issue. Those neighbors need to continue to live next door to each other. Those students need to continue to go to school together for the, you know, until they graduate. There are certain shortcomings in the traditional criminal justice system that restorative justice can jump in and fill. So as I've discussed, criminal justice is more offender focused instead of victim focused. There is a negative stigma that attaches to anyone charged with a crime and brought into court, and that stigma can actually have a negative effect on somebody's potential to change. Offenders are not encouraged in the criminal justice system. Traditionally, they're not encouraged to internalize the impact of their actions, which lessens their chances at positive change. And I think this next one is especially true for juvenile offenders, bringing them into court. It's just a way of desensitizing them to the system. If you bring in a kid at age 12 for a school fight into the criminal justice system, they're going to realize, oh, it's not so bad, you know, the judge is friendly, it's not going to act as a deterrent in the future necessarily. They'll become desensitized to that process, and it's not as big a deal to them. There's also no connection to community harm. So when we charge a person with a crime, a person's crime, we have a certain obligation created by statute to inform the victim of that crime. The one person who, for example, had an injury caused to them, or their house was broken into, we need to give them notice. They have some input in the process, although they don't control the process. Who we don't bring in criminal justice is, for example, the neighbors of that burglarized home, who now feel like they need to lock their doors, or you know, can't let their kids out to play after 9 p.m. because now they feel like their neighborhood is dangerous. So that's one example of how crimes impact not only the direct victim, but the community around them. And restorative justice practices is one way to bring in community members and have that offender acknowledge the harm to the community as a whole, not just to an individual. There is also some evidence that restorative justice practices can reduce recidivism in the future, which reduces costs to systems over time. So there is potential for a positive financial impact. So when offenders are required to internalize the harm that's caused by their actions, they're less likely to act in the future, cause criminal acts in the future. If you can change the behavior of a youth by restorative justice practices, it's less likely that they'll need to be placed out of home, for example, which the county pays for, or going to either a detention facility or a foster care facility when they're a teenager. When you can divert a case to restorative justice practices, you reduce the resources that are expended by probation, the county attorney's office, law enforcement, human services. All of those systems And just in general, what would benefit Cook County by an effective program like this is the community healing that can happen. And it reduces the potential for future retaliatory actions by people. You know, if you consider, if we can deal with the conflict face to face in a restorative justice practice and ease tension that way, tension is not going to continue to build over time, causing negative stress, causing people to act out against each other in the future. So, I don't know, I'm optimistic that we can make something like this work in Cook County. I think it fits the county's mission statement of supporting community through quality public service, improving quality of life for Cook County community members. And right now this is a volunteer-driven, grant-funded program. I think Cook County should have a voice at the table because the county attorney's office and law enforcement would like to be able to refer cases to this program. So we want to be involved in the design of the program to make sure that it's of a quality and a design that we're comfortable with making referrals to. So right now, I think Inger already kind of listed who we've got involved, but law enforcement, county attorney's office, community members in general, probation, violence prevention center, and then we've invited, I think we might have a Grand Portage representative. We also have invited Cook County Higher Ed and Cook County ISD 166. We would love to have Commissioner Bershine be a member of the committee. He's got experience in restorative justice practices in schools. I think he's interested in the project. Did you want to talk any more about how you think?
Well, I'll just make a few comments. Thank you. I mentioned at our last meeting I had an interest in this and a little bit of my background, and I had requested that handout be put in our agenda packet, so you had a chance to look at that. And I included Pine counties and just a front page of Carlton counties. But the Pine County one, there's a PowerPoint of a session I attended my first year in office, offered by AMC on restorative justice, and it was a workshop, and was somewhat impressed with that, and it sort of kicked in a lot of my previous experiences. And I've worked with this counties that are, I checked with AMC, counties that have formal programs on them, there's 8 right now. And the Rock, Nobles, Co-op, Swift, Chippewa, Yellow Medicine, Pine, Carlton, Renville, and Dakota. And many others are incorporating them into their child services or, various forms of justice program. But according to the resource I had from AMC, these are formal programs. As I mentioned, I requested I be involved in this because my professional experience, especially with the victim mediator aspect of it, that's how we ran our discipline in the schools I was in charge of my last years. Also, I've had some personal experience with this. I have family background in Lakota traditions, and about 13 years ago, I participated in some healing circles, and as a support member, and I had some, just as a support member, had some powerful, life-changing attitude changes in how I viewed certain things. And dealing especially with what it can do to a victim. And I think many times in the system we forget about that. And so part of that aspect, I personally think that it's powerful for everyone and the community, hopefully. Another reason that I think Molly had mentioned that the home placement costs are skyrocketing in a lot of counties, and they're looking at this as an alternative. Number one, I think because it's effective, it's based, my background in psychology has indicated that this is the best way to deal with changing behavior. It's the most effective, and it involves all the players. It also has been a way to save some financial costs in out-of-home placement. In the last 5 years, our out-of-home placement has almost doubled. It's gone, and our budget for 2018 is $484,000 for out-home placement. And just one placement alone can, you know, be 50 to 100,000 or something if it's a very unique, special place. So, as you know, this is exploratory or formative at the time, but I would request to be a member of this, because I think if we get involved in the beginning, we'll see how it can help us, all of us. And, so I request to be appointed as a part of my assignments, so it's more official, and I could work with these other people. I also think if someone's interested in being an alternate, that would certainly be welcome as well. So I think that's basically all I have. And any questions, maybe try to answer.
Okay, very good. And Molly, your presentation or anything else you'd like to add, and then we'll open up for discussion.
Well, just, I know that commissioners are concerned with adding commissioners to committees or adding another committee to the list. And this is one that's not going to require a bunch of travel. It's a local project. And can certainly re-examine as the project develops and we have a better idea of what it's going to look like in the future. I'm sure commissioners feel welcome to take another look and see how the county should be involved as well.
As most meetings go, in the beginning, there'll be probably quite a few, and then you'll get your basic structure, you'll get your input, and then it'll hopefully mellow out. But we could think about an alternative too, if you decide in the future that you would need that backup, Myron, or we can help you if you have 2 other meetings that day to work things through. So, comments, questions, Commissioner Severson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I may have attended one of the conferences that you attended at EMC, and it was excellent. One of the excellent conferences that the AMC sponsors during their meetings, particularly the annual meeting. Actually, I think it was the legislative session that this one. Anyway, it was excellent, and the speakers were from Carleton County, and I wanted immediately to bring it to Cook County, so of course I didn't, but you did, so this is great. I'm really excited about it, and I'd be certainly in favor of Commissioner Bersheim being the member. I think this is not a normal committee. This is not a, as we look at all the committees, I think we're out, as we go about going to meetings and so forth, we're always analyzing, and I do not see this as being a waste of time or I think it would be a valuable growing concern, and will have a lot of benefit and value to Cook County in the future. So I'm really grateful for you bringing it to Cook County, and grateful that Commissioner Bersheim is willing to serve, and I think we should also have an alternate.
Commissioner Dukert?
Of the 8 counties that are doing a program similar to this, do they have commissioner participation on their committees?
You know, I didn't inquire more about that. I would assume so, especially it would have to be adopted by the board. So these counties have adopted the program.
Oh, I
officially.
support the program. I think it's absolutely
No,
wonderful, but
no.
my question was, what is the reason to have a commissioner on the committee? You know, we have an ATV club and 2 snowmobile clubs that do tons of work on our lands and bring in money and resources and do repairs, and I would personally love to get paid to be on those committees. And I know it's only $1,200 and we save tons and tons of money by having this, but the question is, why are we gonna invest a commissioner's time in it? I'm not opposed to it, and I'm not gonna rehash this out, and I will support it, and I will say that we should add it to our committee list, and I would love to have a commissioner and an alternate. It's just, I didn't ask my question the right way, I guess. I'm done.
Commissioner Deschamps?
Well, I'd make a motion to appoint Myron.
Support.
Any further discussion or comments? All in favor of appointing Myron to the Restorative Justice Committee?
Aye.
Aye.
Did we get someone that wants to be an alternate? I'm sorry, we're all busy. We have a hard time making it to our meetings. So we have to have backup. If this is really that important, we need to make sure that we have backup.
So there's a 2-day training, September 7th and 8th here in town at the higher ed. Would the alternate need to go to that?
You got that on your schedule already, right?
Yeah, that I can attend. I can't attend the.
But would the
next
alternate
meeting.
need to do that to
But then-
understand their role? No, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I have it booked in, so.
Okay. Do we have any volunteers? Well, at the moment, I could back him up, okay?
I'll make the motion to appoint Ginny as the alternate.
Second it.
Madam Chair.
Support?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, since Rowan and Rena have been patiently waiting, we will go ahead and hear their presentation, and we'll just take a 5-minute break after that.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Morning.
This is our second scheduled quarterly report on radio communication program. As you may recall, we decided to start doing these soon after we have a 911 communication meeting where we meet with all the stakeholders, the various people that use Armor radios and public communication tools that we support, and we give updates and about the program there. And so it is a public meeting, but we felt it was important because it often some of the things discussed there the public is interested in around cell service and towers. So this is that report. So we're just gonna build off of mostly what we talked about last time, and we'll take your questions at the end. One of the things that I always like to talk about whenever I get the chance with radio communication is our vision for how we manage radio communication program. And of course, that's about maximizing services and minimizing impacts. We've talked about that a lot. And I think mostly we've talked about it in the context of fewer towers or shorter towers or towers without lights, things that impact our view shed and the natural beauty of the place that we live. But I'd like to extend that just a little bit because there's another aspect to it as well. The other area of where we're trying to minimize our impact is as we provide these services, we minimize the impact of system failures, of things needing repair, of emergency situations that cause Rowan to be called off of vacation and have to drive up the trail at 2 in the morning. So those are also projects that we're working on as we try to continue to get our operations in order and understand how to mitigate some of those risks so that we can continue to manage this with minimal resources, even though that program is continually growing. So we do that through contracts, we do that through operational calendars, we do that through a lot of different things, and Rowan will be talking about that a little bit more. One of the significant things that happened since last time we talked to you was, of course, and you know about this because you approved it, was we got a revised tower ordinance in place, which significantly helps us going forward in terms of managing tower requests and hopefully encouraging more co-location and being able to manage the changes that are coming effectively. So thank you for that. We're also looking at kind of along with that, I've been working on some where we need to have other policies around towers. We have a tower request policy already that prioritizes the kind of service. You know, you all approved that, I think, last year. Maybe the year before. Time gets away from me these days. But working on some other ones around rates. How do we establish rates? What are appropriate rates? You know, what's the baseline for that? What's the method we use for that? So you'll probably see some of that going forward. We're starting to look at some of those other policies that impact the way we communicate with other people. Last but not least for me, and then I'll turn it over to Rowan, we've been having a conversation for about, well, since I got here, so over 4 years, about our issues around 911 redundancy and the fact that CenturyLink comes up the shore and it's not redundant, and anytime there was a fiber cut, we lost our ability to have 911 services, which caused all kinds of interesting emergency management backup strategies. And I think, as you know, I think it's my second week here. I was in the cities talking to Dana Wahlberg about that. And we are getting very close to a solution. It's not all there, but it's partly there now. They encouraged ECN, the state emergency communication network people, who oversee 911, have been working with NESC, who brings our fiber up for all of the government people. That's how we get our fiber here. They also provide part of the fiber for MediaCom and for True North. So that comes up, if you will, one side of the road, and CenturyLink comes up the other side. And, you know, there was no real failover strategy, but they've negotiated that, contracts, and the situation with CenturyLink fiber now being cut, there is failover for that. It's completely redundant. So if CenturyLink's fiber is cut, they have dedicated fiber on the NESC side, and that fails over. So that half of the problem, which was the bigger problem that we saw most frequently, is fixed. Now they also intended to do it the opposite way, have the NESC fiber, if it got cut or something happened to it, to fail over to CenturyLink. There were issues with that happening straight up because the age of the fiber, the discrepancy in the age and the quality of the fiber between those two, the NESC fiber being much newer. But they've been working on that using repeaters at some different COs, and they've been working on it. So I talked or emailed yesterday for an update on that. They're hoping to test that next week. That would give us failover both directions. The third wing of this would be, and that would help us as a government entity. It would take care of the redundancy of our stuff that comes up in our network here, the courthouse and our other things, and the school, the hospital. The third piece that they're going to try and solve after that is how can they also provide failover for True North, for Arrowhead's part. And that will be the next thing we work on. They think that'll take a little bit longer, but they are committed to trying to solve that. So we're getting there, and hopefully we'll have a good test next week or in the next couple weeks, and we'll be able to report back that we feel comfortable about that. So I'm going to turn it over to Rowan now to give the other updates.
Okay. Madam Chair, Commissioners, good morning. My updates will cover cell service projects that we're currently working on, the remaining MnDOT armor projects in the county, operational projects, and then BDA projects that we're also working on. For the cell service projects, the updates that we have will be for T-Mobile. They are live at Grand Portage and Hoagland. All the work is complete there. Road maintenance and other things that were associated with the construction that happened has been taken care of. We have an executed contract at Lutzen, but they haven't built out yet, and they haven't exercised the option. We do anticipate them to go this year. For Verizon, since the last time we were here, we did get notification from them that they don't plan to build out 2018 at Hoagland or Grand Portage. 2019 or 2020 would be the earliest for their construction timeline. We haven't executed those contracts. They're ready to be executed, but that allows us the freedom to put somebody else in there if they don't move in before someone else wants to. And AT&T has expressed interest in the Hoagland site, part of the FirstNet build-out. So part of the FirstNet build-out through AT&T, the sites that they're targeting are Gunflint, Mid Trail, Sawbill, Hoagland, Grand Portage Info, and the old Ski Hill Road. They're already on some of those sites. They're either co-location or equipment upgrades on all county-owned towers or towers that are on county-owned land. Just a little bit of context, I guess we've talked about it a lot of other places, but the FirstNet is a public safety wireless broadband network for public safety. It can be used by the wider public, but when you have congestion issues, it gives priority and preemption to the users and devices that have been flagged as public safety. So you get in a situation where there's just so many people using the network, fisherman's picnic, or if you have an incident like the Husky Oil Refinery where there's a large-scale incident and everybody picks up the phone to contact each other or post things to social media, system becomes congested. FirstNet gives priority and preemption to our first responders so that they can use the devices that they depend on. We're in different stages with all of those sites. Contract negotiation, red line leases, exchanging back and forth, and then structural requirements and loading capabilities of individual towers. But we continue to move forward on all of those sites. Moving on to the Armor projects, a little bit of context, the last two sites to be built in the county and a handful of the last few sites to be built in the state are Lima Mountain and Seagull, the Seagull Lake Tower site. Lima Mountain has been part of the state's initial build-out, state-funded project, result in a state-owned tower on U.S. Forest Service land. It'd be a 180-foot tower, not lit. Again, just for context again. Important redundancy piece. This allows a redundant path for the microwave links that connect these towers throughout the state. It's that those microwave links are what allow the Armor radios that our public safety responders use to talk across the county and across the state if they need to. What Lima Mountain would do is provide a redundant path for that connection. The Seagull Lake site is a state, county, and volunteer fire department, Gunflint volunteer fire department partnership to provide needed coverage in that area, the end of the trail area. There was a public information session held in April, and it included a propagation study, viewshed analysis, as well as cost for the fiber optic cable that we would use, and that fiber optic cable is being used as an alternative to the microwave links that connect the towers together, and that allows us to bring the height down. Following that public information session and the public comment period that followed, we met with the U.S. Forest Service to review those comments and discuss their process for approval moving forward. And what they told us is that they are about 4 to 6 months out from an approval process. That to us sort of presented a concern for extended timelines. MnDOT has a 6-month process that they need to follow once they get approval for the property, to use the property. So what we're looking at now, even if those sites were approved today, MnDOT wouldn't be able to build until 2019 because of winter and construction season. So what we're looking at is a way to avoid a scenario where we get 6 months out and they deny one or both of those sites, and then having to identify sites, go through all the work that it takes to make sure that they're viable, and then the approval process and adding MnDOT 6-month process to that, pushing us out to 2020. So what we're looking at is trying to guarantee that we have an option, workable solutions to build in 2019 at the latest. And so the best way that we think to do that is to start looking at county-owned property as alternatives. We've identified a couple sites. We'll be going with MnDOT. I'll be meeting MnDOT at those sites later this week to make sure that they're viable and understand what will be required there. If those sites work out, what we intend to do is in parallel seek approval to build on those sites pending denial or lack of a decision by the U.S. Forest Service in early 2019.
So I just want to be clear that we believe that the best solutions are the ones that are already proposed. Particularly at Seagull, that's a very minimal solution. I don't know that we can find a solution more minimal than that. But if it's denied, you know, it's not a matter of no tower. It's still a matter of we have a coverage issue there. So this is simply what Rowan's suggesting here is risk mitigation of more delays. We don't really want to go to a different site, but this gives us a leg up if that is denied, so that the process is already a little bit further down. Just want to be clear that we're not abandoning that, or it's simply about managing the risk of not knowing what the Forest Service is going to do at this point.
Ideally, we would seek and get approval to use these sites and then not have to. We anticipate, and I should say we don't anticipate the Forest Service denying both of these sites. And like Rena said, we know and believe that they're the best options. But because of the timeline that the Forest Service has given us and MnDOT's timeline requirements, and trying to avoid another fire season and another year of our public safety personnel operating with these restraints and added complications, we want to make sure that these sites get built out 2019. So that's going to be our plan moving forward. You can expect us to come forward at some point seeking that approval. If it is on county land, we would be subject to our own internal processes, obviously, and that would be conditional use permit. And so part of that conditional use permit would be tied to Forest Service denial or lack of approval by a specific date.
So you see where the first ones that'll get to use our tower ordinance, if that's the case. Not someone else.
On the operational projects, we continue to move forward with contracts for our new and existing tenants, regular site maintenance, increase and focus on defensible space, safe work environment, site security, but also tower inspections and structural analysis all through the operational calendar that we mentioned last time and Rena referenced today. Two of the sites that we've been doing a lot of work on this year are the Bogus Lake and Honeymoon sites. Those sites are the oldest sites that the county owns, the oldest towers the county owns. They're over 50 years old, and they were purchased by the county, not built by the county. And sort of two issues that we have there. One is that when we purchased them, we didn't get a set of construction drawings or structural drawings, and those drawings are required to run a structural analysis. Those analyses are what allow us to determine how stressed the tower is, how much loading capability a tower has, if we can add more equipment to it or not. So to address that, we had them structurally mapped, which involves people climbing the tower and measuring every tower member and nut and bolt and recording that, and then run structural analysis for us. Because the standard that the tower was built by is so old and has been replaced several times over, these towers no longer meet the structural standard that a tower needs to meet today, even with no loading. So we have two issues with these towers. One, they're over 50 years old, which is our replacement timeline for towers. It's the timeline that it's an industry standard. If we get it from engineering companies, it's the standard that MnDOT uses for the 330 some odd towers that they own, and they don't meet the structural standard that they need to, the TIA 222 standard. And so for those reasons, we're going to start looking at replacement options. And the two options that we have to replace these towers that we're looking at and considering, the first one is optimistic or ideal, I guess I would say, would be some sort of rent abatement with a cell tower provider, where they replace the tower so that they can add their equipment to it, and they would bring it into compliance and replace it. We've had that happen before. We've done that at the old ski hill, replaced an older tower there with a rent abatement agreement through Verizon. We've also had a similar agreement at Grand Portage where they structurally modified the tower, and that was those costs were covered through rent abatement. So it has happened. There's precedent for it, but we're not in contract negotiation with anyone right now for that site. The other option that we're looking at is, because we are executing lots of these cell service projects through new and existing revenue, we would just allocate that funding to capital projects like tower replacement. That is the plan. These towers would be the first ones to be replaced. What we're looking at based on projections for the site, the agreements that we already have in place and the agreements that we have coming up, if things go the way that we anticipate they will, we should be able to have enough revenue set aside to replace these towers within probably 4 to 6 years. So we have those two options to move forward with tower replacement. And the last update that I have is BDA's. So we're working on 2 different BDA projects in the county, and the 2 areas of concern are in the Colville-Hoveland area and the Tofty-Schroeder area. They are beyond the scope of what the state is going to build out. Obviously, an armor site is the best option. If you can't have an armor site, a BDA, if you can make it work, would be the next best solution. We've had a company up here to do some studies that show that BDAs would work, and they've been working on the design for each location for some time now. The new update that we have since the last time we were here is that we've identified a site location for the Colville-Hoveland area out of a list of candidates that the engineering company gave to us. So, and it's county tax forfeit property, and it's centrally located in between Colville and Hoveland. And what we're waiting on now is support structure requirements and then associated coverage studies. So how tall does the support structure need to be, and what will the coverage study look like based on those? When we get that information, we'll share it with the key stakeholders, public safety, community, and others. And then, as the plan has always been, we will seek grant funding to cover half of the cost of this project. And then also, beyond that, reach out to our state and federal partners who benefit from improved coverage in these areas to offset the remaining cost. So it's an expensive project, and we're going to look at trying to get the grant money to cover half the cost, and then B, a little bit like the pictometry cost sharing agreement that we did, reach out to our state and federal partners for assistance there too. The Tofty-Schroeder area one is still being designed. There's just some complications with the lack of line of sight and the topography in the surrounding area and the expanse of the coverage areas. So at this point, I'm anticipating to have a solid plan for the Hoveland-Colville area put in place and moving forward before the Tofty-Schroeder one. And that's the feedback we're getting from the engineering company as well. And that concludes my update, and I stand for any questions.
Okay, well, took a lot of notes, and thank you for bringing all this to our attention. I think someone is on the 911 communication, right?
That'd be me.
You, okay.
You.
You. Okay, any questions or comments? Commissioner Deschamps?
Nope. Are the BDAs dependent on the Lima Tower, or will they?
No, the donor sites that have been identified are Hoveland and Bogus in the Hoveland-Colville area, and then Honeymoon or Lutsen in the Tofty-Schroeder area.
Okay, bidirectional amplifiers, just for those that.
Right, yes.
Yes, thank you again.
I figured you all knew, but just in case. That's all I have.
I appreciate your work and good planning. Job well done.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yep, thank you for not just good work, but good communication skills. It takes both, and you've been under fire by the public, et cetera, and you keep moving forward with good communication skills, and thank you for that. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much. We'll take a 5-minute break. Move on to Jeff Brady and our concerns.
Does that proposal schedule make more sense to you?
Yeah.
One thing about the chair, if you do the discoveries.
You know you have permission to get up and move around too. I always get a kick out of yes. A couple of the commissioners that are
We can't glom them all
get up
together
and
and do them at the
stand
same
up in the back
time.
of the hall because you just can't stand all that sitting.
Okay.
Those are so cute. Who brought those? You did? Fun.
Looking like,
Very fun.
yeah, I'm trying to go that direction. I want to get it out of the woods. I want to get it running anytime soon. At least this weekend, you know. Down on yesterday's training code went on it. Within the shop. So I go call me back.
You can't think of a way to get your excavator on your dump trailer?
You know, you can barely get the,
Can't jack
I
up.
can't even get the tracks that far up the ground with a skidder. Yeah, I got all the time to get down a little low. With that skidder. My $12
Well, I'm not supposed to be here, I'm supposed to be working, so.
How would we know? Yeah.
There you are.
Yeah, it started having some issues a couple weeks ago where it just wouldn't start. Next day it started. 3-4 hours later, all of a sudden it just died and didn't have nothing to the starter. The little lights would come on and everything. Started showing some codes. Then it just started running just fine, and then I got down the road another 3-4 hours and it shut right off. And, boomed out, you know, and luckily it had time that it took to, I was able to get it down like 10 feet in front of me. And I'm lucky enough to be walking half off the trail. I was mowing, so I could, it's easier to do it this way. And I changed, I mean, I've gone through everything with the mechanics, and then it's like, we're gonna get it the rest, we're gonna fix it. 5 miles out in the woods, you couldn't even drive there with a truck to go do anything. So made some skids and got a skidder out there, serious skidder. I was getting it up off the ground enough to put the skids underneath it, and then took all the skidder to do to pull it. It was only 240 skidder, but it had chains on it. So we got 2.5 miles out of the woods. Now I can actually get a lowboy to it there. And now work broke down, and very too busy, and I have no other options. I was gonna go down to Bobcat, Duluth, just blow it up. So I'm gonna try to get, so now I'm gonna call them, call Porky here yet, and then find out if the truck is broke down or not. If so, then I'll call the town, go on up and computer on it,
No.
Okay.
So they
there's
get
no
no
red
mail.
line.
wrong with it.
And I found really colorful envelopes. I was influenced by. Stacy, I have
Yeah.
crispy bars,
Oh.
and you'll be getting some in the office. 9 by
Thank
13. 9 by 13, exactly. We're not gonna eat all that up here. Yeah. Okay, we'll get some more coffee.
Yeah, but then are you gonna be able to have somebody go out in the woods and
Stuff.
spend a day and go to Duluth and drop
And
it
I
off?
found those red, white, and blue.
In your cupboard?
No, I mean, they're fresh. It's not like
These might be
one last
tough.
year, but
Oh my
it's
God.
like, and then I had
If
the
they were in my
marshmallows.
cupboard, they'd probably be 20 years old.
Well, we wouldn't say anything.
That's all fine. If anything comes from my kitchen, colorful, don't eat it.
No, well, you're still alive, so
Well,
it's okay.
because it's in my cupboard.
I know, I was going through some of Dick's stuff. I said, 2013, well, it's still packaged, maybe it's okay. Maybe it's still okay.
Yeah, it's hermetic.
Oh, going through your package stuff and seeing a date that goes back to 2013.
Oh.
No,
No,
they're
we were
fresh.
talking about the twinkles or the
The little sparkles,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, the twinkly
The
stuff.
twinkly sparkly stuff. Well, when I see stuff in the store, it's like, yes, I'll grab that, because I'm,
Yeah.
sure, you know, I'm gonna be doing treats or whatever. It's like,
That's the whole idea of Ruby's pantry, right?
They don't come in this form. With sprinkles.
No
Yeah.
sprinkles there.
Yeah, although you could probably get
I
sprinkles
read
by
that the
the gallon.
expiration dates don't have any real scientific.
It,
They kind of
it depends, yeah.
said that on a lot of things, it's just, you're probably not gonna look as good to it as you are.
Which is not really good to eat something that doesn't
Well,
just
it's getting
deteriorate.
Getting closer.
Overall.
Or refrigerator.
That's what I told somebody the other day. I'm
But
wrong.
we're not expired.
Yeah.
No, not yet.
Mostly it's refrigerator stuff like cheese and things that could go bad, or you stick meat in the back end of the refrigerator and you forget about it. It's like,
Freeze,
oh,
if it's
if it's
freeze,
green,
throw it
yeah.
out.
Let it go.
Mrs. Stalin. Yeah.
We don't even fight over Otis Creek up there forever. I know this creek is one of those things. You have one or two beavers, then all of a sudden change its watershed.
Yeah, whole bag of marshmallows.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, you know, you get all this diversity and then they start having
Okay, you go right ahead.
eradicate going off the dam.
Have 2 or 3.
Hard to manage when the animals are used.
Some counties.
So good. They bring back so many memories.
Mm-hmm. I know, doesn't it though?
Mm-hmm.
Plug and run water, man, they hate that running water.
That's a good time of year to go up there.
Alright. Rudy, are you using up all the coffee?
Try it.
Might as well drink it.
Well, that's why I make it cold to start out with.
Okay, everybody's back, so we will start off with some reports from Brady.
Madam Chair. Commissioners, the first question is a request to subordinate the county's revolving loan with Hedstrom Lumber to a loan with Lake Bank, 2 Harbors, in the amount of $500,000, and authorizing the board chair and county auditor to execute the agreement. Hedstrom asked us to do this as they need additional financing after their fire recently, and they're doing the rebuilding. This would essentially, since they started with their loan package back in 2008, we've been behind all of their loans, most of them with Lake Bank, and that's where we start, because our role in the revolving loan fund is the bridge loan, and we don't compete with the banks, and so we always take second position, sometimes third position, depending on how many banks are in the mix. So what we look at is our collateral still sufficient? Is the applicant making their payments? Is their financial position strong? And if it is, we've always agreed to subordinate to the debt.
In a bigger city, we'd be exiting and it'd be a bomb warning.
So in this case, we've subordinated to various amounts over time because they've paid off some of their old debts. They've paid off some, and then they've issued again. That doesn't happen with too many, but Hedstrom is a big ongoing operation. So the committee met yesterday. Myron was there, and there were 7 of us there, and we voted unanimously to recommend approval of the subordination. Currently, they're at about $238,000 on their $250,000 loan, which that started in 2008, and then they were paid that down significantly, and then we renewed that again a couple of years ago after they were rebuilding again from earlier fires. But so now they're back up to 238. So requesting that approval and allowing the board chair and auditor to sign the agreement.
Okay. Any questions or comments about that? Bobby looks like he's studied.
So if none, I'll move that we authorize our auditor to sign the agreement with Lake Bank of 2 Harbors. as a subordinate to the loan to Edstrom Lumber Company.
Okay, I have a motion.
I'll second that.
Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Second item is the general fund quarterly budget report. And you've got, as usual, you've got it broken down into two sections. You see the midpoint of the second section, those are generally our operating accounts where we actually budget those funds. And then below, you'll see a number of departments, primarily grants that we don't budget for. It's just there to show you what else is in the general fund that were additional expenses and revenues, but they're not budgeted or levied for. I'd call your attention to that line, adjusted for budgeted levy on the second page. That's the bottom of those operational accounts. And it really points out the limited value of the first quarter report. As you can see, way over on the right-hand side, it summarizes revenue, expense, and levy. And the revenues right now are at 12%. In the first quarter, we hadn't received our BWCA money yet. So, I mean, that's just about $2 million. So, and then some other, no property tax yet, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really out of whack this time of the year. The expenses are slightly high. In general, that's because winter, the heating bills, snow plowing, et cetera, in various departments. So that's just the generality of that, which leads to the levy being over 49%, mostly because of the revenue is so low. I guess, given the limited information, I would just leave it up to any questions you had on any particular departments. And then it'll be much more informative at 6 months.
And really at 100%, it's really informative.
Yeah. But we're usually pretty
Toward-
well on
toward-
track at 6 months.
Yeah.
Okay, well, no other questions, and it'll get better as the months go by here. Things will level out.
It'll
Okay.
show up.
Yeah.
It'll show up better. It'll be pretty close to, typically we're pretty close to our numbers at 6 months, which is why departments wait for those 6-month numbers for reviewing their budgets.
Okay. Commissioner Duker?
So what happened with all the property taxpayers that paid at the end of last year to get ahead of the new tax codes? How did that change our whole?
Well, we didn't distribute that to these.
Oh.
That doesn't get, even though we received it, we didn't include it in and distribute it until the May distribution, so.
Perfect.
Got
It's
it.
in the revenues, it's in the fund balance, but it's not showing up here.
Got it. 'Cause it's the
822
first
is where it
quarter.
would show up in the miscellaneous with property tax, but it won't show up until the second quarter.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you on that.
So I just ask, just your approval of the report in general.
Motion to approve.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then the third motion we're looking for, Lisa is here also. She prepared the list. This is requesting approved by motion to set a date for a public meeting for the purpose of classifying tax forfeited land, not sold or released from trust. Partly, this is a comprehensive list of all of our tax forfeited lands that Lisa put together. And it very well could be that at some point, some of this by previous boards had been classified, but we don't have a record of it. So if we're going to take any actions on any of this property, we have some upcoming. We can do this individually and classify each property as it comes up for a transfer, a sale, or we can take this action and unless there's a reason to classify something otherwise, in general, we would classify them as non-conservation, and therefore we can take these actions to sell it or otherwise. We're not aware, I'm not aware, neither of us are aware of any interest by any party to classify them for conservation purposes. So there's a 60-day period where someone could comment and say, there is a parcel here, we would like you to take some action. I can't even anticipate what that would be, but that's what the period is for. So we're asking you to take that action to classify these, and then the 60-day out period is the minimum period for having this notice out there on our website, and we would publish it also. And so the nearest board meeting date would be September 11th. And we would ask to do that at 9 a.m. just because some of our meetings are short. So if you take that action, we would ask to set that date at September 11th at 9 a.m.
Okay. Well, questions, comments, or you want to move on to the motion?
I just say, did you say September 11th?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
At 9 a.m.
Yes, 60 days is about the 8th, and so that's the first meeting.
Okay.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brady. All righty. Next item would be Jeff Cadwell, the administrator, with some items.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. The first item that I have before you today is a request to contract with iCompass for an agenda management and board management solution. I think you're well aware right now that our current agenda management system is a paper file folder on the back of Julie Berglund's desk. And what we're looking at is we're looking at a cloud-based agenda management system that allows us to manage our agendas and manage our minutes and manage our workflows all through an organized municipal-based agenda management system that's providing the solution for lots of people across the country and specifically throughout the state of Minnesota. Currently on our county website, we have agendas and minutes for the commissioners meeting, public health and human services, soil and water, and planning and zoning boards. So in order for this to be something that works, for something that creates efficiencies throughout the organization, it really had to have the buy-in from all four of those groups, because what we would propose doing is eliminating MIS supporting agendas and minutes on the website, and us transferring all of these agendas and minutes onto this new cloud-based solution. We had a meeting with all of those affected departments, at which point then we scheduled a review and a preview of the options and the features of this system. And originally, I was just going to be recommending that we go with the agendas and minutes and the Meeting Manager Pro system, but specifically at the request of Allison in Health and Human Services, she suggested that we add the board manager on at this point in time because she saw the advantage of doing that. So the main efficiencies that we'll see here is MIS and Kirk will have to have nothing to do with the agendas, that the appropriate authority for each of the agendas can publish the agendas when they're ready. As soon as they're ready, they can make them available. We can put the agendas for the entire year out ahead of time. So as we're doing bond sales, as we're setting public hearings, as we're doing all of this, we can be plugging stuff into the agenda system and not having to put it into a file folder.
Right, and wait.
And it also creates the workflows so that we make sure that we don't miss anything. It also will remind us when things need to be signed and keep master copies of the documents and the business that we're doing. It's not limited by number of users. It's not limited by the number of agendas that can be out there. We've been working with it internally for a little over a year. The free system is limited to having 3 agendas at a time published. So some of you have seen the emails I think the Personnel Committee, the MAP meeting, a couple of other meetings where I've used it to show people what the format looks like. If you're looking at your agenda packets now and you're seeing the number 9A and the photocopies of photocopies, we'll be cleaning that all up. This will assemble all of the data that's included with an agenda packet in a single PDF when you go to publish it. So it'll be clean, it'll be indexed, it'll be much easier to reference. That's internally why it makes sense for us. Externally, why it makes sense is that the agendas and the minutes will be searchable from the point that we adopt going forward, and uploading past agendas and minutes is a very simple process, so that we would create a history of a searchable database of our agendas and minutes, which is the business of this board and the other boards authorized by the county, so that people can find the information that they're looking for. Right now, we've had a couple of transitions in our agenda system online, and it's been stored in different places, and the search function is not necessarily working. Backfilling that information is just a matter of having the time to be able to upload those agendas and minutes. The system has OCR, optical character recognition software, so when you update a PDF file, it turns it into a Word file. That is how it's searchable. The other thing that's nice about it is people can go online and they can opt in or opt out. It meets all the requirements for managing people's notification preferences. And if somebody opts in and says, I want to be notified when the new Planning Commission agenda is available, as soon as that's published by Diana, everybody that subscribes to it gets a notice that says this is available. So the boards get notified, any member of the public gets notified. If something changes just at the last minute and an item is added, they'll get a notification that something has changed, that there's a new version of the document. So the expense is really insignificant in comparison to the benefit that we're going to have from this. The people who reviewed the documentation, specifically in Health and Human Services, when they were talking about the ability to benchmark and track progress on project management and workflows. So items that come up in the agenda and are referred for future action, you don't have to recreate the wheel, they just stay there, and you just move it over to the next item, add the additional materials, and it's ready to go for the next time it's going to be discussed. So there was a lot of excitement about it. There will be the process, if it's approved, would be about a 4 to 6 week process where we'll get them our visual standards and our graphics, so that when you go to the site to go look at the agendas and minutes, it looks like the Cook County website. And then when you come back, you'll be coming back to our website, but all the agendas and minutes will be accessed through a portal that they'll provide. And they'll set that all up and create essentially the request before the board that we have. They'll create those request forms that are specific to each of the major categories. Then they'll train 3 or 4 of our county staff who will be the trainers to train the additional staff within the county who will be using the system. And that's all included in like I said, this $3,850 per year for Meeting Manager Pro. Board Manager at $1,500 per year allows us to manage all of the boards and commissions that we have. We can put in as much information or as little information as we want, but at least what it does is it puts in the reminders. I know at the last couple of Planning Commission meetings, they've been talking about the fact that some of the terms are expiring in December, and they need a reminder to solicit applications to fill those vacancies. Well, this system automates all of that. We put in all the Airport Commission members and their information, and all those boards all that information for all those commissions is available to the public. It's all accurate and up to date, and it provides the workflow so that we make sure that we meet the requirements of advertising and filling those positions in an appropriate manner. The application process, then somebody wants to apply for one of those commissions, they push the button on the website and go right straight to an application process. So it'll streamline all of that. Right now, the application process for all of those boards and commissions is manual through Julie's office. So.
Wow.
There was a third component that have not recommended to add now, but we could add at a later time, and there's a video component that allows us to index we will be able to link the videos that we have through YouTube because this program already works with the YouTube software. So we'll be able to link our YouTube videos to our minutes. There is an opportunity that they have a video component to their software package that allows us to index that. So if you're looking at the minutes for a meeting and you skip to item 4B, it'll skip to that section in the video.
How much does that cost?
About another $3,600, about $300 a month. So $3,600 for the year.
Because we've been asked over the years to do that.
And even if we decide that we want to do that in the future, I would probably still do that after we implement the first two components of it.
Good idea.
Simply because of
Stick
the
down.
uptake and the training that are going to be involved in that. We're not going to lose anything. We're still going to have the ability to link our YouTube channel events to the minutes. I would love to be able to show you the overall look and feel of this, but I don't have access to it without them actually doing the demo. But it provided a nice interface with the public. And there's lots more pieces to that, but for right now, it's just a way for us to more professionally manage the agendas and the minutes, which are our interaction with the public.
Okay. Questions or comments? It says here that there's room in the budget for this expense with these two items.
Yeah, administrator's budget has not, because we settled contracts without the need to use contract services or contract attorney services, I have room in the budget to take this on for this year, and we'll budget for it in 2019.
So that'll be for this year?
Yep.
So will it be still the same price since it's already July?
No, it'll be a month, it's prorated on a
By
monthly
month,
basis.
okay.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Severson.
Thank you. It sounds amazing. I can't even wrap my brain around it, but I would imagine, I don't know if it has any impact for those people's data practice people that have to have the information. They can all be responsible for a lot of their own information if it's a cloud-based system, or?
Oh, I think it's just gonna make it easier to respond to
Yes.
public data requests with the search function.
Got it,
Way
got it.
easier.
Yeah.
People will either be able to find the information they're looking for, or it'll be much easier for us as the responsible authorities to direct them to the right place where they can find that information.
So then my only other question is, and this is the child in me, it's like trying to imagine what the world will look like with a, how, does this cloud have limits? I know the cloud are really computers, in a real place and space and time, but like how many radio waves can we handle? These kind of waves, it's just a fascinating idea. But
One other very
I
critical.
want to get on.
Yeah. One other very critical piece of this is that we don't have to scale our website to be viewable across any platform. This system will be scalable to view across any platform. So if you as commissioners are more comfortable using an iPad than the Surface that we're using, the paper copy, you can print it, you can update it, you can access it, you can look at it on your phone in a format that is actually readable.
Awesome.
So
Wow.
the scaling is already done. We don't have to manage that, and then we don't have to ADA compliance, all the other compliance issues that there are related to that are farmed out to this other company.
Cool.
Okay. Commissioner Bershon.
Sounds like a good system, and I'm sure it'll be cost effective in the future, especially all the hours or work that goes in by our personnel versus using software.
So people will still be able to go to the county website and go to agendas and hit the button, and they'll not notice any difference. And then for those who do not embrace technology and love paper, will that still be an option?
If somebody still wants to request a paper copy, they'd still do that the same way through Julie, and Julie would distribute them, but she would be able to give them a cleaner paper copy because she's going to print it from a clean PDF. And if somebody knows that they have the ability to to subscribe via email and be notified that there's a change. The other nice thing is on the days that we have new information that is updated, we can append that to the agenda for this. If we had stuff that was introduced today, if we had a link from that file, we could append that to the agenda materials and republish it, and then all of the information that was presented for the meeting would be available going forward.
That'd be nice. There's some county meetings where we have people that can't come to the meeting and they have to call in, and then I sit in the meeting and take pictures and email the documents during the meeting to them so they can see what we're talking about during the meeting. So I'm not a millennial, but I absolutely love this stuff. As you can see, I'm a Macking and a PC at the same time during every meeting, but this is like so exciting.
Well, then I'm the paper person, so I would.
I'm gonna move away from paper.
But I like to study it a day or two before, so
I can study
that's
it.
still available, but I would have to understand how to do that.
If your request is currently that Julie provides you with a paper copy, then the request options is the same. It's just much easier for her to meet that. I will tell you the way that we cost justify this is that we take Kirk completely out of the option. Kirk is spending 2 hours a week doing agendas just for the board meeting, and that's over $3,000 a year of time that he gets to spend doing something else.
And he can go on vacation without worrying about the agenda.
And at this point, yes, if he's on vacation, we don't have a backup for that. I mean, when that happens.
We do, it happens.
It does, it gets taken care of, but the cost justification is simply the freeing up of the other time.
Just in time.
But you're saying then I would depend on Julie to get a copy to me?
You absolutely, you could still print it yourself.
Right,
Printing
okay.
it yourself
Well,
is
that's my
much
point.
simpler.
Yeah, right.
You open it
That's
up
my
and you
point.
say print a PDF and
Right.
it's done.
As long as my printer will cooperate, which it wasn't the other day. Okay, Commissioner Deschamps.
So this comes up, we pay it by the month?
Yep.
And it's in the budget for this year? And next year, it's not in the budget?
It's not, but it will be accommodated within the budget as we free up other resources.
And I can see buying new stuff, we seem to be able to find a lot of money for stuff, but when people come and ask to get their town halls fixed, we don't have no money for it. That kind of irks me, it kind of irritates my people in the East End that have been asking for over a year now.
But this program will save us money instantly. Way more than it's being spent.
I understand your frustration.
Mm-hmm.
I totally understand your frustration. I have been frustrated not only with your town halls, but with other facilities that we have as a county and the needs that we have to fix things. And so, you're right, we need to have a discussion about it. This is one of those situations where we save here and we make it up here. If we can come up with a creative way, I have no problem sitting down with you and figuring out how we get a cost savings on this end to pay for it on that end, and what we
There you go.
liquidate. I 100% understand what you're saying.
But
I
it
get
seems like we can just pull money out of the sky for something here, but.
We're not pulling it out of the sky. We're saving on this end and allocating on this end. If there is money in the cloud in the sky,
There must be money, it's a cloud.
We'll have access to it now.
I'm all for it. But I understand. I see where you're coming from. I get it.
Right, and that's the job of the budget committee, is to take all those things into consideration and have a proposal. I know that we've had certainly one proposal about the hall, and maybe we need to refresh our memory when we have those discussions at the budget meeting. So we'll make a note of that, Myron.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I think the issue is we didn't budget for it, and that's what we need to do.
We haven't
I
budgeted
know
for
I'm
it since I got
involved-
here.
I'm involved in other projects where our facilities have been really lacking in maintenance, and we're gonna end up paying for it in the long run. But, we can correct, and I agree with you, Bobby, that we just have to be persistent in making sure some of these things get done.
So I have a couple questions. So you said that our topics would be searchable by, how would that be, like topic or date, or how would we find
Anything.
anything? Okay, but you have to have a key to do that, like meeting or, let's say, for instance, B2B. We could put that in there and then it would come up with,
You could use any search string the same as any other Google search. Yep, absolutely. It would just search within the context of the data that's on this site.
and then what about the timing for the submission for the agendas? Is that gonna be different?
I would suggest that we would hold to the same deadline so that we can publish agendas on Thursday before the Tuesday meeting.
Okay,
But that's completely up to us.
okay.
It does afford us more flexibility, but I don't think we'd want to use that flexibility. We would still want to maintain the deadline so that we give commissioners the agenda far enough ahead of the meetings.
Mhm. And the training for people, how many would be involved? Department heads, or who would be involved?
3 or 4 people. I think it would probably be Sarah in Health and Human Services, Diana in Land Services, Julie, and myself, and then we would train the other users of the group.
Okay. The other users meaning,
Stacy would be involved because we would be uploading the minutes into the system or actually creating the minutes within the system. There's a couple of different ways to do it. Teresa with Soil and Water would be a user. And then anybody else, the Airport Commission, anybody else who wants to migrate their agendas to this format instead of whatever format they're currently using could be invited to do that. User level control or access control is user-based. So we can do we could use the Personnel Committee and the Public Safety and Transportation and the Budget Committee. You can do them all internally. They don't have to be available on the public site, but they would just be limited to the people who are supposed to be getting the notifications about those minutes. So we can manage internal and external meetings and internal and external documentation. It's just a matter of setting the controls up properly.
so the training period would be right at the beginning and then as they,
I think it'd be 4 to 6 weeks before we'd be using it.
okay. So much going on though. It's just like it's a timing problem or a timing situation with getting all of this underway too. Okay. More questions or comments?
Motion to approve?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. Next item there, Jeff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we know that we have a question about the August schedule for commissioners' meetings, and I just wanted to talk through what our options are and find out if you have a preference on how we resolve that. We're getting to the point where we should probably make some notices. The first change was that Allison is not going to be available on the 21st of August due to a continuing education commitment. So she's asking to swap the 21st for the 28th and do the PHHS meeting on the 28th of August. And then the other problem or potential conflict that we have is August 14th is the primary election. Do we want to have a board meeting on the 14th, or do we potentially want to have the board meeting on the 7th, skip the 14th?
They'll probably be using this room.
They will be using this
Yeah.
room, so if we hold the meeting on the 14th,
Yeah.
we'll be holding it someplace else. But I think the easiest thing to do potentially would be to have the board meeting. We had talked about in the budget calendar, having budget presentations on the 14th. And we were looking at having the highway department do that and law enforcement do that on that first day. I don't know why they wouldn't be ready to go on the 7th.
Well,
But if we're switching public health and moving our meeting to the 21st, as long as all of our bills are paid and nothing's delayed, we could move everything to the 21st.
That's another option.
It'd be a longer day. most
It
likely.
would be a very long day, I would guess.
I was here back in the day when they were.
They're all that long.
Yep, they're all long.
I don't mind that.
Kind of miss those days.
And there's nothing saying that we couldn't hold the board meeting on the 14th and
somewhere else.
and have a short meeting. We've held that meeting over in the ITV room, and we've just said, okay, then this meeting we're just gonna do the budget review for Highway Department and law enforcement and take care of, you
The
know, and
difference
any.
is we had a mobile cameraman back then.
Yep. And any other business that we would push to the 21st. So we could hold it the 14th and the 21st and just push most of the business to the 21st and do the budget review on the 14th. That would probably be better than putting a pinch on Pat. I think Highway Department will be ready, but I don't want to speak for Pat's time.
I have a conflict on the 7th.
So hold as scheduled on the 14th, switch the 21st and the 28th.
I think that would be better for me, because I think we're having a pretty important meeting on Council of Aging.
And I'll let Julie determine where we can have the meeting on the 14th, whether ITV room or we go to the log cabin.
Sure.
We could go to the community center.
We would still have then the
Community
meeting
center
the
would
next
be-
week on the 21st,
Yep.
but then the public health would be pushed to the 28th?
Yep.
Okay.
Do you need a motion for that?
I would like a motion to amend the schedule.
I'll make a motion to move public health to August 28th and the regular county board meeting to the 21st of August.
And to change the venue of the August 14th meeting.
And change the venue of the August 14th meeting to be determined.
Okay. We have a motion and we need?
I'll second it, just for the case of discussion. So the committee of the whole would then be on, would we do a committee of the whole?
It would,
That would be on the 14th?
No, the
I would still hold that on the 21st.
21st.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I wouldn't change any of it.
So the 21st will be the committee of the whole, just as it has been in the past? Okay.
Just not public health.
Got it.
Okay.
Well, the public health is 28th, we moved it to
Right,
the
yeah,
28th,
yeah.
yeah.
No, we would
Okay,
have-
got it.
Okay.
We would have the board meeting on the 21st
First.
and then a committee of the whole in the evening.
Oh, we would have, that's what I'm
We
confused
wouldn't,
about.
we wouldn't change the committee of the
No.
whole schedule. I don't think we would need to.
No.
So we would also have a county board meeting in the morning?
Yes.
On the
On the
21st, and a committee hall in the evening?
Our second Tuesday meeting, or our fourth Tuesday meeting would be on the third Tuesday.
And our budget meeting would be?
So what are we calling the 14th?
Regular meeting in a
Just
different
regular.
place.
It's just, it's the regularly scheduled meeting in a different room.
To be determined.
Okay.
So the only thing is changing the location on the 14th.
Yeah.
And swapping the Health and Human Service and the fourth Tuesday.
Right.
And I'll have Julie get a notification out publicly and to all of you so that you know that nothing else has changed.
Okay. And our budget meeting will work in somewhere.
On the 21st.
It would be as scheduled.
21st.
As
Correct.
scheduled the 21st?
14th and
There's preliminarily set
I'm
up.
sorry, oh,
We're not changing any other dates.
okay. So it's your question is the budget
Yeah,
meeting,
the
that'll
budget
still
meeting.
remain on the 20th.
On the third Tuesday.
Okay.
Okay,
Does everybody have this?
yep.
Okay.
So no budget review on the 14th?
Yes. No, he was asking a separate question. He was asking about the budget committee.
Budget
Oh,
committee.
okay, I'm sorry.
He was
Okay.
asking about the rest of us, just his own. That's why it was confusing.
Yeah, okay. All right, okay.
So we're on the same page.
All right, and I'm sure we'll,
Okay.
we can go week by week and make sure we're up to.
All right, so we've had a motion, we had a
Yeah.
second. Any further discussion, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay.
And then, Madam Chair, the only other update that I would provide is we have been working since February or March with all the staff that are involved in the time and attendance tracking and the payroll and the HRIS. 2 years ago, we authorized moving to Kronos for human resource information systems management. And as we see that our use of MSIS for payroll processing is probably something we're going to have to change to a different provider in the near future, and we see significant opportunities to improve the way that we're doing business if our time and attendance, payroll, and HR were all a single database system. We've been reviewing providers. We've vetted 4 different providers who provide a package that allows us to do all of those things. We've narrowed it down to 2, and we had a final presentation from one of those agencies last week, and we're having a final presentation from the other agency, I believe, this week or next week. And we will probably be coming to the board and making a recommendation to plan to change to a new system in 2019 and go away from the current time and attendance system and payroll system and adopt a comprehensive time and attendance, payroll, and human resource information system. We anticipate that whatever change we promote would be budget neutral, because the numbers that we have from the 2 companies that we're working through right now, are Kronos and Paychex, are less than what we're currently paying when we add all 3 of them up together for what we're paying for time and attendance and payroll and HR systems. So if we replace them all with one integrated database, we'll have significantly improve our ability to provide services, to speed up the process, to have some redundancy and duplication in case somebody's gone and we still need to do a payroll, to be able to administer benefits. All of those things will be enhanced by doing this. And like I said, we've been working as a group since February. We're initially looking at doing an implementation this year, and then we realized that A, we hadn't budgeted for it this year, and B, Brady's office was concerned about having a significant disruption in the payroll part of the process during an election year. So our recommendation will probably come to a recommendation of one of these programs with an implementation in first or second quarter of 2019. Brady, anything to add on that? I just wanted to make sure the board is aware of where we're at with that process.
Just the process with MSIS is we have to notify them by April 1st in order not to pay for another year. So we'll have to do that for next April. Yeah.
So in 2019, we will likely have some overlap because we're using 2 systems. We'll probably have some overlap in the fees that we're paying for 2019. But we should have some savings in not having to pay fees for RT Vision for the time and attendance system.
So the main reason for this is that the company you already have is not going to be doing these services anymore in the future.
MSIS Payroll Systems was serving 7 counties, and Itasca was the largest of the 7 counties, and they've gone over to Kronos. And so there's only 6 counties that are still using MSIS to process payroll. And they are trying to come up with an opportunity to provide benefits administration and HR administration, but we haven't seen that it's going to compete with what the private sector software companies are doing. And the fact that there's only 6 counties that are still using this software, I see this as being a dead-end road that's going to go away.
Yeah. There's a couple of them that are looking at it the same as we are, and I know payroll budget for MSIS a couple of years ago was about $6,000 a year. It was very, very affordable, and it's $18,000 projected now. And then if you lose 1 or 2 more, it has to keep going up.
Got it. The rest have to take up the slack.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions on that? So we will look forward to presentation.
You'll see something coming up.
Okay, anything else?
No.
Okay, moving on to commissioner concerns, reports, meetings to note, updates.
A couple. I did finish the Board of Appeal and Equalization certification. You all got your emails from Todd. Yeah, Brady, you're off the hook down there. So I did finish that, and then, I've mentioned it a couple of times, and I know we're super busy, and we've changed over to administrative government and done huge strides in doing 20-year plans and strategic planning and facility updates and looking at. And I really, really want us to take a committee of the whole meeting and sit down and look at our facilities, such as the Historical Society and town halls, and I want to look at what we collect for fees on those, what we charge. I mean, I don't even know if we're charging the same fee at all the facilities and how we're allocating that. And I wanna know what we're collecting. I wanna have a fee schedule. I want the money to come here because it's our building, not to somewhere that we still haven't gotten any information on how much money's coming and what's being done with it. And how are we gonna use and maintain these buildings? And let's come up with a maintenance plan and figure it out and say, you know, you need a roof every 20 years, you need windows. It's simple stuff, and I adore the volunteers that have been taking care of these buildings, but volunteers only have so much capacity, and honestly, I get a complaint about one of the buildings because one shutter is not painted the same color as all the rest of the shutters. And so, you know, it's simple things like that, but there's no reason when we're doing all this planning, I know we've got other priorities, but we can't just keep ignoring these priorities. So I'm asking Madam Chair for this to please become a priority and be on a committee of the whole so we can haggle it out.
So Jeff, we could work on that.
Honestly, we have a lot of data. We can't haggle that out at a committee of the whole. We certainly could come up with a list of things to be included, but a comprehensive facility plan is a 12 to 18 month process. And if we want to start by having a conversation, we certainly could. But
can we find out what we collect for fees and where those fees are going and how we're maintaining things? I mean, even if we can't come up with a facility plan, I mean, right now, we don't know what money we're collecting or where we're collecting it or how much we're collecting and how we're paying for it. And I think the Historical Society has taken on most of the repairs themselves.
it's a conversation we can certainly have, but there's a lot there that we can't accomplish in a 60 to 90 minute meeting. We can't
Okay.
even make an exhaustive list of all the questions to ask in a 60 to 90 minute meeting.
No, we can't, but we gotta start asking them.
So the money and the fees, Brady, would you have a handle on that?
What kind of fees are we talking about?
For the use of the building.
For
You
which?
know, when people use the community center, we collect a fee, so when they use town halls, are we collecting fees for those town halls?
We are not. We're not.
Right.
So
Kinda-
I can answer that
Kinda
very
concerns me.
quickly.
Somebody's collecting a fee.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how we maintain things.
Well, maybe we can start with getting a list. What's out there and what's collected and what isn't collected. Would that be helpful?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And who would do that list?
Well, there's someone that's managing the checkbook for some of these facilities. I asked like 2 months ago.
Could you make a list? Do you know, I mean, are you aware of, you said the Historical Society, everything that we
Well,
own?
Myron's on the Historical
Yes,
Society.
okay.
So he could get an idea. I know, like 4 years ago, their toilet was about to fall through the floor, and I think that's been repaired. But I know you've got a pretty good list of what's going on there.
Yeah, and we're going to make a report to the Budget Committee coming up, but, yeah, the main concern right now, maybe this will come up later, but the building, the main building, Historical Society building needs paint. Lack of storage space is pretty crucial, and that's part of our county responsibility. And then with the flood, that complicated it all more, you know, and suitability of archives in the bottom level. So right now, I think that we're renting a dumpster to put behind the Johnson Heritage Post to store stuff, which, and you know, I think that we need to start planning and developing, and, you know, and we had some real budget, you know, challenges last year, and I think, you know, obviously, that if we would've gone to maybe 20% or 19.9 or 19.8, maybe we could've put something more into maintenance, but we couldn't have, okay.
Bobby,
So-
do you know who's maintaining, who's collecting for yours?
Arbison's.
Okay, and then is it Hovland that we did the construction projects on? I mean, I haven't even gotten an update if those are complete.
I haven't either, but I believe they are.
Okay.
But we do have a facilities plan, and we've gotten information from that, but I guess what I'm hearing is that we could start working on some kind of maintenance plan, at least be aware of what it is now and maybe what it would take to get to capacity to, is that something that's possible?
We're working on it. There's there's so many unmet needs in this building, let alone talking about all of the other buildings that we have responsibility for. But it's, as you're aware, we're gonna be getting a final report from Wold on the jail study and the major county facilities building sometime in July or August, which is coming up soon. So we are working on that.
And if I could comment, you know, I understand the reasons, just being on the budget committee and concerned about this, because, you know, this is an accumulation of not planning ahead. That's really what it is. This is what happens when things accumulate and you don't budget for them, and then it's called deferred maintenance. And I've said that before, when you go into a deferred maintenance mode, you're looking at, you know, just piling things up.
Honestly, when I got started, Brian asked. He asked and he asked and he asked, and we just couldn't do it.
Well, maybe it's time to do it. I agree with what you're saying.
Well, get a handle on everything and then have some priorities.
Get a handle on everything. Good luck, Ginny. It's going to be a difficult task.
There we are.
I don't know that that could ever happen.
But it is a
Well,
budgeting
that's
issue.
our goal. That's part of the whole strategic planning.
That's
Yeah.
a cloud goal.
I know.
It'll take a whole cloud to
Yeah.
take care of that one.
Okay. Let's move forward on that and see what we can come up with. And Bobby, think about, you know, your end of it. And okay. Anything else?
Oh, we're under commissioner reports?
Yep.
Yes, I have something. Last Friday, we had our annual meeting with the DNR with N-Club, and N-Club is the Northern Counties Land Use Conservation Board. And we have a county commissioner from each county all across the northern tier of the state. We meet monthly, and the July meeting is devoted to working with the DNR, and Commissioner Lanier is, the DNR commissioner is at that meeting, and he gets a review and so forth. And at our meeting on Friday, we had a report on Minnesota PILT payments, and I thought I should just bring this up so that the public understands that sometimes when we work in these or serve on these boards, that there usually is a benefit to us, and I think I'd like to share an example of that. I think if people recall, our PILT payment took a hit, and then we got a reimbursement. And what happens with the Minnesota PILT funding is that it's sort of on a 5-6 year cycle. And so you go through an assessment, and correct me, Brady, if I'm wrong on this, you know the details better than I do. But so you go through this assessment, and there's complex formulas that we use. It also involves the Department of Revenue, which has some formulas, but then the PILT payment is determined on several factors. And one of those is acquired land, and the other one is just sort of a PILT payment. And it involves wildlife management, acquired resources, administrated, other natural resources, land, and that's our biggest category, which is 261,513. What happened is, with this cycle, if you have a bad year with your assessments going down, which happened to us, and they used us as an example, that our PILT payment went down 39% this last time around in 2016, I believe, for 17. And then we got that reconfigured again and brought it up. But even with that, now we're going forward the next 5 years. So our 2018 payment is going to be, I think it's 378,564, and our 2016 payment was 370,000. So the point being that in this process, the legislature added 50 cents per acre in this formula. But because we had that low assessment year, we're only getting an $8,000 increase. Whereas other counties sometimes are getting 30–40% increase because of that 50 cents per acre increase. So this has we had a report from John Ungaro, who is the land director. He works with the legislature from St. Louis County, but he's also contracted with Arrowhead County Associations, and he works with N Club as well. And they're advocating to get this changed to a 2-year cycle, or at the very most a 3-year cycle. And what that does for us is that our assessments are now going to be going up, and that we will get, you know, a gain again. But otherwise, we're going to be not penalized, but we'll be held at a very insignificant increase, even though the legislature upped it 50 cents per acre, from $1.50 to $2, which is quite a bit, you know. And so they're going to bat for us, and they're using us as an example, and we're going to try to get this changed in the legislature. So I just want to mention that, you know, we've got people supporting us, and I think we'll have a greater likelihood of maybe having some effect by having this board do it. Heidi?
We assess that property, so if we go to a 2-year, does that mean we have to assess it every 2 years?
Basically, it's filling out a form.
Well, filling out a form takes staff time. I'm just wondering if we've talked to our assessor about the effects on his department by doing this.
From what I understand about the process, the dollar return on it would be tremendous compared to if we didn't.
I know, but we hire out other people to do things for us because we
The
just don't have
analysis.
enough staff to do
Yeah,
it. That's my concern is, can we check with the assessor and make sure we've got the staff to do
I've
it?
never gotten a sense that that's a large burden on them, but just to play on what Myron was saying, so he was required to make that reassessment, and he did it on a method that would have paid us a lot more, but the DNR rejected that method, and instead of, you know, restoring us to previous amount, they used a previous incorrect number, which is why we got such a low payment for 1 year. And they said when he then responded in a way that they could accept, that they would restore some of that, which they did. We did get the $56,000 about a month ago. So we'll kind of be in the middle ground from our high point, because our values did go down. But there were two things. Our values went down, but they didn't accept our assessment. They used the wrong number. They've restored that. So now we're just dealing with the low assessment, which is real. And now we're going to get a little bit better. So we'll get the 56,000, and we'll get the little bit of addition from the 50 cents. So we'll be significantly better than we were this year. It'll help our budget.
The point being too that the N Club board really went to bat to support getting that reassessment done, and so there was some political pressure there that I think helped.
Good, thanks.
Okay, good. Anything else? Well, I know this is quite a ways out, but just a reminder that we have our AMC meeting September 13th and 14th in Alexandria. AMC, if you're going, let Julie know for the reservation, which would mean that we would need to arrive on the 12th. And also this coming Thursday between 5 and 6:30, there's a public meeting in regard to the Fall River Bridge. So there could be a quorum of people there. Just a reminder on that. Heidi.
There's also the opioid summit on September 12th, so we would actually, for us, because it's Alexandria, we would have to go down on the 11th.
If you decide to do that, right?
Yeah.
So check your calendars on all that. Then you'd need to arrive on the 11th.
Unless you want to leave at 4 a.m.
Okay. Anything else? Otherwise, I will call for adjournment of the meeting.
I would like to announce the anniversaries.
Yes, sorry. Yes, Heidi.
So Officer Schrupp, 5 years. Phil, 2 years in our Soil and Water Office. Dagmara, 2 years in Public Health and Human Services. Mitch Everson, we have two Mitches, but Mitch Everson is 8 years in Land Services. Britta Moose, 1 year with Law Enforcement Center. Mr. Brady, should we say out loud? 27 years. Thank you. And then Molly left us, because, you know, she didn't want us to point it out here, but Molly's got 11 years with us. And then Julie, the next big one, Julie, that helps us out with all of our packets and everything and gets stuff to us on time, 24 years in the administrative office. So thank you, everyone, for everything that you do.
Thank you, Heidi. Now we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Brady, do you want a copy of this, or should?
Yeah.
I've got not a copy of the file.
So it sounds like you have a cold. Only half?
Yeah, I was a little more than yesterday.
So you're improving. Way to go.
Should not call it that.